Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 69. The cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek. Joseph Campbell.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my Indie Film Hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by a new course called DSLR Video Tips, How to Make Your Video or Film More Cinematic. It's a new course that I've developed with my co-instructor, Egon Stefan Jr., who's been in the business for probably around 30 years, and you'll hear more about him in the coming weeks on a few other courses that we've worked on together. And I'm really proud of this course, and it really goes into a lot of detail as far as the different things you can do to make your images look more cinematic by using different things and understanding different concepts of, kind of bringing over some of the old film stuff and the film concepts over to DSLR shooting. So if you want a deal, we have it on sale right now for $25, and you can go to indiefilmhustle.com/DSLR. That's indiefilmhustle.com/DSLR. Let us know what you think of the course, and we have some more stuff coming out in the future. So today's episode, man, I'm so excited for this episode. You guys are going to get so much info and knowledge off of my guest. His name is Michael Polish. Michael Polish is one half of the Polish brothers, who are known for making some amazing independent films. Films like North Fork with Nick Nolte, James Woods, Ben Foster, Daryl Hannah, and a bunch of other movies. It was a wonderful movie. Roger Ebert called it a masterpiece. And it is wonderful to watch. And the story behind that movie is even more impressive than the movie itself. They came out swinging with their first film, Twin Falls, Idaho, which was a independent film about conjoined Siamese twins, which is not the easiest thing to get financed, and they'll tell us stories about that, followed by Jackpot, again, North Fork, and then many other films like Big Sur, starring Kate Bosworth, among others. But one of the reasons I really wanted to bring him onto the show is not just to talk about all his early indie work, but the specific film that I really wanted to go into with him is his movie called For Lovers Only. This movie was shot on basically a zero budget. It was shot basically with him as the director, his brother as one of the stars, and the other star was Stana Katic from Castle fame with Nathan Fillion on ABC. And this movie was shot first and foremost on a DSLR back in 2011. So they were kind of the first, if not the first, feature film shot on a DSLR. They shot the entire movie in Paris, France. And Michael goes in deep detail about what kind of gear he used, how he was able to get into like amazing locations and cafes and things like that in France without a permit, without anything like that. So it's guerrilla filmmaking at its finest. But that's all wonderful, and there's a lot of great stories about filmmakers who make these small independent movies. But the wonderful thing about this one is that he actually made money, and not chump change, mind you, real money. They've reportedly have grossed over $500,000 on a basically no budget film shot on a DSLR. It's one of the few films that have been shot on a DSLR that's made a lot of money, to my knowledge. I might be wrong. I'm sure there are others out there, but this is the one that I heard of. So please, if anybody knows of any other DSLR movies that have been made that have gone out and made money, please let us know in the comments. They were one of the first independent films to actually leverage iTunes, and they sold the majority of all their sales on iTunes. They didn't make any big festival premieres or anything like that. They just kind of guerrilla'd it completely. So he tells us the whole story. I really ask him a lot of detailed questions about how he was able to make that movie, along with all this other amazing gems of information. He was so kind he spoke to me for almost over an hour and a half, and I was just kept grilling him about questions. So he was such a pleasure to speak to, and just so giving of his time and of his knowledge and experience. He's been making movies now for, God, over 20 years, I think, at this point. So it's been pretty amazing what he was able to do. So without any further ado, guys, please enjoy my conversation with Michael Polish. I'd like to welcome to the show Michael Polish. Thank you so much for being on the show, man.
Appreciate it, Alex. Thank you for having me.
So first question I'm going to ask you is, how did you get that part in Hellraiser?
Oh man, only indie guru guys like yourself will ask that question. I've been asked that question maybe 3 times in my whole life, and guys that are very serious about cinephiles really understand. We were doing the movie Twin Falls, Idaho. We were actually researching makeup and how we were going to bond the two twins together. And Gary Tunnicliffe was the effects supervisor on that show. And in exchange for him helping us, they asked us if we wanted to do a bit part in that Hellraiser. So it was sort of a trade, and it was great because you got to meet Doug Pinhead, and you got to see how these movies were being made, and that's relatively low budget movies too. Mm-hmm. At that point.
That was a sequel. That was like the 3rd sequel or something like that. 4th. Yeah, it was Hellraiser Bloodline, right?
Yeah, Bloodline, and you got to see how long makeup sessions were, and sort of how everybody got together to make something pretty special in terms of. You have a lot of people creating a movie that you don't necessarily get to see or hear about all the time.
Right. And now, when was that? That was the 90s, right?
Yeah, that was the 90s. That was last century.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me ask you, what made you want to become a filmmaker? You and your brother.
I was going to high school up in a small town up in the suburbs of Sacramento, and I was fairly good at drawing and I knew a lot, and I was really obsessive about movies and watching movies. And from what I can remember in the 70s, in the 80s, I saw just about everything that came out in the theaters, and I would see 3 or 4 movies a day, especially in air conditioning times like the summer. We'd probably watch 4 movies in one complex. And then I didn't have the background in film because there was either Super 8 and there were some 16 cameras around, but it's very difficult to get our hands and to get it all developed. So what I ended up doing was applying to Cal Arts, which is just up in Santa Clarita, with all my drawings and design work. And I was able to get into that school right out of high school, and then get myself fluent in cameras and how it worked and how film worked. So I didn't really get an education in filmmaking, but I was in an environment which had a lot of filmmakers in it.
So you weren't on the track because Cal Arts is kind of like a breeding ground for Disney. Am I correct?
Yes, yeah, that's true. And there a lot of their animation funding and a lot of their staff either worked for Disney or has connections to Disney. And it's a wonderful school for animation. It really is. And Pixar, when I was there, was being born. And a lot of today's Pixar are the ones running Pixar and doing a lot of good films.
Very, very cool. So I first discovered you when I saw the film North Fork many years ago. It's absolutely a gorgeous film, by the way. But when I did some research, I found out that the financing fell through a few days before principal photography. Is that true? Well, how in God's green earth did you get? Because that's not a simple little like a couple people in a room movie. That's a period. It was a period piece.
Yeah, the sets were being built, and you find yourself when you're making a movie and financing falls through that it's not that uncommon when you're a filmmaker and that happens. You probably should figure out if you survive that you're going to be in a group of really good filmmakers that have had this happen to them. You're in a pretty good class when that happens. However, when we were up there for about 4 to 6 weeks and every set was being built, so we had money being spent, but the second or the third round of money that was supposed to land never really landed. And so we stretched what we could into the first week of principal, but by the second week we were just out of funds. And so we were having everybody's kind of scramble for money, and we ended up borrowing money I ended up borrowing a couple hundreds of thousands of dollars from and getting the movie finished. We just got the movie in the can. It wasn't even we couldn't even get to post. And so what we ended up doing was borrowing that money, flying back from Montana, cutting a teaser trailer that was a little bit longer, and then started to show a very rough cut. And we showed it to Sony Classics, which was they released Jackpot and they released Twin Falls, Idaho, their first previous features. And Paramount Classics and Miramax, and those Paramount was having a really good run. And we went and showed Ruth Vitale, who was running it at the time, and she put an offer on the minute the movie ended, and actually paid exactly what the movie cost and then some. And so we were able to finish the movie without having that sort of stress of trying to pay that person back. And it was a remarkable time, and it was a remarkable time, a very stressful time, but in the sense of making a movie that we actually wanted to see on the screen, it was intended, and it for me is one of my favorite experiences, regardless of the financial.
Yeah, absolutely. And for everybody who has not seen that movie, I mean, it has an insane cast with Nick Nolte
Right.
and James Woods. So I mean, it's not only did the financing fall through on your independent, it was an independent film, right? Basically.
It was, I believe. We finished. I mean, we got home for about 800,000. I think we put about 800,000 at that point, and then we finished it for I would say roughly between 1.4 and 1.7. We ended up. Yeah. Yeah. No, that was 2002. Yeah, 2003. 2002 we filmed it. 2003 it was released, and it was, and ironically, I'm accepting the Golden Thumb Award that Roger Ebert gives out post Roger Ebert the next week because it was one of his favorite movies. So yeah, and that was when we premiered at Sundance. We premiered at the big theater Eccles, and I don't know if there's 1,000 people can fit in there, maybe 1,200. You know? Yeah, and I remember when you have to present it, and I came up after, and it was dark and the lights come on and not a single person moved. And oh God, this is just a disaster. This is a disaster. And, I'm just standing there, and I see this figure walk in the middle of the frame, back in the theater, walk up the stairs, and it was Roger Ebert. And he comes up on the podium and just says, "Will you have breakfast with me in the morning? I'll talk to you." And I said, "Yeah, great." I was so shocked. And then once he did that, everybody started to raise their hands. Yeah, of course. Oh man. Yeah. He was. He's done that a couple times in my career. And that's why I have a fairly good relationship with him, and I've had a great relationship with him because he was such a film fan, and he also protected the people and helped usher people and filmmakers that he thought that needed other people to understand what they were doing. And he did that. He would even also tell you that if you missed the target, he thought a couple of my movies hit the target, but he said, "I can't wait to see what you do next."
That's a very impressive budget for that kind of period piece movie. I mean, even back in the back in the the 2000s. Those are 2000s. So coming from an indie world, because you definitely are, definitely all up until Astronaut Farmer, you had never worked with a major studio. So what was that transition from complete control to do whatever you want to working with a studio? How was that experience?
Um, you know, we started with Warner Independent, which was having fairly much a distributor on board to do that Astronaut Farmer as sort of a pseudo independent, especially in the early, in the mid 2000s, early 2000s, especially in the late 90s, where studios were trying to land grab these before they were being made because they didn't want to get into these bidding wars. There was a few mini majors that were setting up and doing their own production, so they wouldn't have to go to Sundance or go out in the world and bid for these movies because it was just getting very, very expensive for them. It'd be easier for them to make these ideas. So we went to Mark Gill, who came over from Miramax, and he started Warner Independent Pictures, Warner Independent Productions, and it was called WHIP. And we knew Mark from the days when he wanted to do Twin Falls, Idaho. Yeah. And when we made it with Whip and we did this movie, it was more money than we've seen to make a movie. You know, we had to build a rocket and we wanted to do these visual effects. And luckily there was a studio executive way high. His name was Jeff Robinoff, and Jeff was able to really usher in filmmakers, and he was corralling a lot of early talent, like the Christopher Nolans and people like that, the Hughes brothers, and he found that me and Mark could probably do something special with the Astronaut Farmer. So our relationship with Jeff and Mark made that movie happen. And what was understanding with Jeff was, he said, basically, if you see me down in New Mexico when you're filming, you have a problem. If you don't see me, we'll watch the movie when you get back. And and I found in recent years, I found Warner Brothers at that time, or really working with some, that they really don't have a lot of say. They don't have a lot of finger touching and figuring, kind of the minutia of everything. They want to see what you do, and if there's a problem, they're gonna step in. At least that was my experience with Jeff. And that was way easier than any independent I ever made, and because if you had the vision, they had the financing for it, and I think Jeff left a legacy at Warner Brothers to prove it. He proved that very, very right. Yeah, right. It was Jeff, and when Jeff was with Warner Brothers, I think it was a very special time, because we saw a lot of, we saw them work with Spike Jonze, and he just knew how to corral this class that was coming in. I say it was about 97 to 99 and 2000. He was getting these filmmakers to come to Warner Brothers. Yeah.
It's a different world. It's a different world than 97.
It's a different. It's a real different time, and their idea of not being so eclectic.
Right, exactly.
Is what we're seeing now.
And it's a shame, because I grew up. We're both similar vintages, so we both kind of grew up around the same time period. So I remember when Disney and Warner's they would put out a $10 million movie or a $15 million movie, and and those comedies like Down and Out in Beverly Hills back in the 80s, and like What About Bob, and those kind of movies, and they just don't exist anymore. It's just like either it's under 5 million or 100. It's like rare to see anything else.
Yeah, they really put that Vegas mentality of betting big all the time. That nickel and diming business they just got away from, which it's understandable when you're running a corporation, but it's not understandable when you're a filmmaker.
Right, exactly. And I think I think Batman versus Superman is probably one of those examples right now that they've bet the farm on it, and they'll do okay at the end of the day, but I don't think it's what they expected it to be. It's not paying off. It's not paying off exactly the way. And what Spielberg said, the implosion of the Hollywood system, like, if a studio can only imagine if Batman versus Superman made, $100 million. Like it could cripple a company. It could shut down a studio. And he says a few more of those happen, and I think it will happen. Do you agree? I mean, at one point or another, someone's going to make enough mistakes that, it's going to.
I've always said, when was $100 million something that was a bad thing?
Right. Like they would be extremely upset if that movie made $100 million.
Yeah. When was $100 million a failure?
Right. Well, when it cost 400.
Yeah, and then you have to look at the people that are doing the finger pointing. Really goes back to the person that's spending the money. That having said that, you look at some of the films that do require a lot of money to make. Like The Martian, that was spectacular to look at, and it felt like we were, it felt like that experience of travel. Of even those movies like Lawrence of Arabia, I just felt you were there.
Right. I mean, Blade Runner 2, I don't want for $5 million. I want $150 million in that movie. Without, and let Ridley do what he does. That's
yeah. And you look at Fury Road. and you see every penny on the screen, and more so because it pays forward in a way that is an experience that all the Mad Max films did. They gave you a world, and it made you pay attention to another world.
Absolutely. And that's it should be called Furiosa.
Yeah.
Furiosa.
Yeah.
Max says like 5 words in the whole movie.
Yeah.
But the thing that's most amazing to me about that specific movie, now we're just geeking out for a second, but the thing that's the most amazing about Mad Max is that this whole younger generation had no idea that I think what a 70-year-old plus director made that. And he is as hip and visually stimulating as any younger director out there, if not more so.
Yeah, I believe the later part. Yeah, he's those are the films that got me into filmmaking. Was the Mad Max, the original that was coming out of Australia. I actually watched when HBO just was a brand new home box office channel, and there was 2 of them. I think there's 3. It was Showtime,
Cinemax,
and HBO, and they showed Mad Max probably 6 times a day. And I watched it.
And then the other times they were playing Terminator and Star Wars.
They ended up. And what was fascinating was how much I learned. It was basically a no man with no name situation going into this world, which is very Sergio Leone. And that's, I would have to say, and then I really watched the career of Mel Gibson and what he was doing, because he ended up turning out to be a wonderful filmmaker.
Oh, I mean, Braveheart and even the other one he did right after
Apocalypto is.
No, that's the one. Oh,
yeah, Apocalypto is a feast.
It is a visual feast, that movie,
and
a wonderful stuff. So I was going to ask you, you've worked with some legendary actors. Right. What advice would you have for directors when they are working with very seasoned actors?
Listen. They've been there. They've at least listen to their stories of. They've either been in the shot you want to do, or know the shot you want to do, or acted in the movie you liked, and so you're able to gain a lot of knowledge before you pull the trigger with these guys and girls. These actors are all well seasoned that I've worked with before, and I continue to work with a lot of even young, talented actors that. You treat them the same. Everybody treats each other the same way. You listen to what's going on, and then you're able to direct. Because if you start just shooting around, you're just going to make a bunch of holes.
Mm-hmm.
And dealing with Nick Nolte and James Woods are extremely 2 different type of actors, extremely 2 different types of personalities, but yet they both have an incredible presence on screen and are able to demand your attention. And if they trust you and what you're doing, it's a walk in the park.
It's only a difficult thing when they don't trust you.
Yeah, if an actor doesn't trust you on any level, you're going to have a hard time.
Exactly, and the more seasoned, I think, probably more difficult the situation might be.
Yeah, because they've seen it all. They've seen it all. With most filmmakers, the first thing you hear with these younger filmmakers or people that are just trying out, they usually say, I want to do something that's never been seen before. I want to do something that's never been seen before. Or I want to put the camera here because the camera's probably put in every single hole and every mouth and every ear and every building and skyscraper. Every shot's been made. So do the shot that's going to tell the story correctly.
Absolutely. Well, I was going to ask you, on the first day of set, is there anything you do special when you walk on and because I mean, I know every movie is a new adventure. So is there a thing you do, a ritual? Because I know Coppola, I've read somewhere that he does some sort of a bonding experience with the whole crew and does and they eats meat. He makes a meal for everybody and stuff like that. Is there something that you do specifically to kind of get this whole adventure off and running?
There's nothing specifically I've done because I've known a lot of my crew since we were coming out of Cal Arts. With the actors, what I try and do is keep it fairly light and don't think I'm going to paint this very heavy with them the very first day. It's just to show them that they're in really good hands, and I might think of maybe coming with a prayer next time.
Well, I mean, is there any advice about making an actor feel safe? Because I know that's a big thing with actors. They want to make sure they are in good hands. Is there any advice you can give directors to kind of give that energy out?
I always, and I think every director has a special way of communicating
Mhm.
with their actors, and some are some directors are actors, and some they can express, and I think if you can articulate exactly what you want in a meaningful manner, and that they can really get what you're saying and not get too metaphorical with them in certain ways. I tend to let the first or second take be what they want to see or what they feel their initial, because they've been practicing on their own or they've had rehearsals. They've come in with their whole, they have a whole deck of cards they're going to show you, and what's your job? Your job is to do is render it down to see what hand you like, and that's speaking in metaphorical terms what you don't want to do. It's just I always find other ways to explain how to communicate, and sometimes you have to use different ways of communication or different methods, but most of the time I like to see the actor perform, and I trust what they're going to do, because that's their job, and they're really good at it, and they're going to try and make the best decisions they can make at the moment when you're filming.
Now, well, let me ask you a question. They say never to work with family, but not only do you work with your brother, but you also work with your wife.
Right.
How do you make working with both of them work?
Trust. There's a big trust factor that we're in this business as family, and we fall in love with the business, and in the interpretation when we create, we trust each other that we have each other's best interests when they're performing or when we're writing or when we're directing. You want to make sure that we're all on the same page, and it's a shorthand when you have family. That doesn't mean that there is not going to be conflict. I find less conflict with my wife just because I have to.
It's called politics. I'm married to my friend. It's called politics.
Yeah. I have to find less conflict.
Because you don't go home and lie down next to your brother at night.
Yeah. I'm not. I've only been tied to him once. I was actually tied to him once, and through the years we haven't done a lot of projects together in the past 5 years, just because our careers took different shapes and shadows and colors. And so I work mainly more with Kate now, just because I'm finding that I've always loved the leading ladies. I've always loved women that can do leading roles, and that I'm really fascinated, just like Hitchcock was, and all the other, even Fincher and all these. You find that if I want to go down that route with Kate, I find it really, really educational for me.
Right. I mean, she's a wonderful, wonderful actress. I mean, and that you have her. And well, it was funny that you have when you were shooting Big Sur.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe this, but I literally was driving up the coast, and I saw the film crew on the side by the beach.
Oh,
I'm not kidding you, because I mean, I live in LA, so I always see film crews everywhere. But when we were driving through Big Sur, we were going all the way up to Napa Valley for a little vacation, a baby moon with my wife before my twins were born. And I look over and I'm like, oh look, there's a film crew, and I'm like, it's not like a little film crew. It's a real film crew. And I was like, oh, I wonder what movie's being shot up here. So I later looked it up. I'm like, oh, it's called Big Sur. Michael Polish did that.
Yeah. If we were up on the road, we were probably doing some of those scenes where they were driving up and down. Because you got us on the day, there's probably 3 days we were actually on Highway 1. I mean, we were in Big Sur for weeks. I mean, we were down in the canyon for weeks. But being on the road, maybe 3 days.
Right. I saw the cameras I think they were maybe getting some ocean shots or.
Yeah, we were probably near Bixby Bridge.
Yeah, it was. It's just ironic. It's funny.
That's great. Should have stopped by.
I wish I could have, but we were on our trip to Napa, and the last thing my wife was gonna go was like, I don't want to go to another set right now. I just want to go to Napa.
Yeah. You don't want to go to another set, especially our set, because we were living like beatniks at that point.
So one of my favorite films you've done is For Lovers Only. I absolutely love that movie, and it gave indie filmmakers hope that anyone with a good story and a camera can make an amazing film.
Yeah, so that was a very, very fun movie to make.
I mean, so can you please fill the audience in on how the film came to be and the unique process in which you shot it?
Well, Mark and I were talking. We were doing movies back to back with fairly big budgets, and it was I think it was 2009 when economically films weren't being funded the way they were used to. Independents are usually funded from outside the studio space, and film funds were drying up. We wanted to, we already aligned ourselves with a couple studios, and we were writing screenplays at the moment, but we weren't making anything. And we always had this idea to do a black and white movie, or just a French New Wave type cinematic experience, which was sort of our tour. We travel a lot through Europe for all of our movies, and we thought maybe France would be great to shoot in. And he said, well, we have this idea. I said, let's not spend a lot of time trying to make something spectacular, because we're not going to have a huge budget. I'll shoot it and I'll direct it, and we'll make it a two-hander. You and we'll find another girl. So we had this story. He had an idea of a story of having a love affair in Paris, and I said, well, let me you continue writing, and I'll go to Paris, and I'll be there for 4 weeks, and I'll scope it all out, and I'll find locations. So it was sort of a tandem act going on. He was here in LA writing, and I was in Paris looking at stuff. And I had the Canon 5D was fairly new, and the video component on it was doing the work that most people were shooting small commercials on, or you were just seeing the birth of this DSLR rate that was going to happen. What I found was, if you were using cinema lenses, they were a little too big, and they weren't you were having to do another mount, and I really didn't feel like carrying on those type of lenses. So I went in and found these Zeiss lenses that had the nice focus pull, but they were smaller, like very short lenses. And I was looking at a 50 millimeter, and when I went to Paris, I was going, this deal, they look great, but there's something not quite right about it. And when I turned it to black and white, the grays were very light and milky, and I go, well, if this is the way it's going to have to look, I'm just going to try and figure this out. So I remember driving around Paris and stacking filters, like threes and sixes and nines on these. And I was just making the most dense image I could make in black and white. I was going back to my hotel room and playing this back. I go, wow, we're starting to get to a real black and, like, a very inky black and white. And I think we're going to get somewhere. And so I called up Mark and I said, I'm ready. I'm going to send you a clip of Paris, what I shot, and you just tell me what you think. And he said, okay. He watched it and he goes, okay, I'll be over there next week. And he said, yeah, but we need a girl. And Stana Katic, who was on Castle, came in and we spoke to her, and she goes, I get off the show in like 2 weeks and I'll come over. And that's basically how that was done. She loved North. No, we didn't tell her. Mark gave her the script on the plane.
How did you pitch her? How did you pitch her? And did you guys know her? Or?
No, she was at the same agency. We were at where were we at this time?
No, but how did you like know her? Did you reach out to her?
I forget what agency we were at.
Yeah, you're at the same agency.
Yeah, we were at the same agency, and they gave us a list of actresses that would be willing to actually. It actually was, you're not going to read the script. You're going to go to Paris with the Polish brothers, and that's it. Basically, that's what really it's about. So whoever walked in that room was really, really brave. And she was one of them that said, I saw your movie North Fork, and I would do what you guys want. I'm just going to get, she was very polite and very genuine about it. And when Mark and her got on the plane, he handed her the script, and I was already in Paris. And so when they landed, the minute they landed, we started rolling. And we did it. I shot the film, and at night we were doing, which they ended up naming ITs, which we didn't have an IT, which we just downloaded it.
Download it, right? Yeah, you weren't a DIT.
Yeah, we were just, I was downloading, at night, giving my SD cards a rest and walking around Paris. And we ended up circling the whole country of France. We ended up going to Saint Michel all the way down to even to Monte Carlo and Cannes and Nice and we did all that I think we did it in 12 days.
Jesus, that's a hell of a beatnik pace.
Yeah, it was a heck of a ride because we had motorcycles and cars and it was just me and Mark and Stana the majority of the time when we were driving around. And then I had an assistant named Sean O'Grady who was carrying a backpack and the sound equipment.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, sis, as far as sound is concerned, did you patch it directly into the camera or did you record it on a location recorder?
Both, depending on the environment. I did pretty much a scratch track onto the camera as much as possible because I knew even though it was tinny and the highs and lows were not so good, there was a medium range that if they didn't get excited, we were able to get some pretty nice dialogue that we could work with. I would say that the film ultimately suffered with some sound, but then it also gave it a feel of authenticity. Of it wasn't great. I would say now if we were to do that again, I would just do a 2 system, all the way around and just have somebody who was mixing the sound as we were going along. But then again, I wouldn't say that would preclude anybody that's listening not to go do it and put it on your camera.
Right. Going, especially with the whole mumblecore and that whole generation of filmmakers that just come out and just like, let's just go shoot something.
Yeah.
Now, did you do audio post-production at all?
Yeah, we did it with a friend of mine that was his dad did North Fork and Astronaut Farmer and did Big Sur, did a lot of my recent movies, and he was able to take the tracks and clean them up on his own time because we weren't paying anybody. So he would take the tracks and spend time cleaning them up, and he would do his passes on it. And he also got some students to help with him to do it that were learning sound at the same time. And we had a composer. His name was Kubi. His name is Kubilay Unar. I went to CalArts with him, and he did some work with films before. So he was able to bring in really classically trained musicians to put down tracks in his house, so he could double up a cello, or he could do a trumpet. And I found that to be when all the other crew members and all the other special positions that were doing, all the real talented people, they pulled what I did, but just with their people, and I feel that that's a collective, and it's also, it works when you're a filmmaker that you have other people that are going to do what you do with their team.
If you can review, what was the equipment that you actually took? Just list it off, like the lenses, the camera, the tripod.
I took my tripod's genius. I named it Boba Fett.
You're a Star Wars fan then?
Yeah, well, it was just this thing was tough, and it was like a Kubaton. It was like a stealth. It was a monopod that I used to shoot the whole movie. But at the bottom of the monopod, it had a chicken foot. It had three prongs on it. But mainly, it could stand there by itself, and you wouldn't see it as a traditional tripod. And so you could take the chicken foot off and keep it as a monopod. And this thing was a savior. I shot with it this last week, and I was in Hawaii, and I was shooting some surfing stuff, and I think it's had its day. I kind of might have to put it to rest.
Might retire it, put it in the office.
I would say Boba Fett was my thing, and it kept me as a cane. It kept me going through things, and I had 2 bodies, I had 2 camera, I had 2 5Ds, but mainly I would say 90% of that movie was shot on a Zeiss 50mm lens. Very wide, and it could go, and you could tuck it up pretty close. I did have an 85, which was probably Stana's close-ups and over the shoulders, and some of the stuff from Mark and Stana. It was an 85, but that was as close as I got with an 85. And then a 50. It was basically an 85 and 50 that were Zeiss that I carried around, basically in my pack.
But they were photo lenses, or they were cinema lenses?
They were photo lenses, but Zeiss made these cinema lenses, but they weren't those huge suckers that we're seeing now. They were, they looked, what's the difference is that they have focal points, focal marks. so you're able to actually see when you pull.
Oh yeah,
when you
so the focus is on the side, not on the top.
Yeah,
like
uh-huh.
photography.
And you can see them, but they look exactly like still photography lenses, and so we ended up doing that, and that was a lot. That was basically one photo backpack it was a backpack that carried it was small, but the length probably about 24 inches tall, maybe a little less. And I put everything, my clothes, everything in there with the camera. I carried that around for 12 days. I was back on a plane on the 13th day. I mean, I was already there for 4 weeks scouting it out. But what was nice about being in France was going into cafes and shooting scenes.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, like, what's like some of the ridiculous locations you got because you were just you just looked like a couple, you know?
Yeah, in there. I always said I was following them around for their wedding video.
If anyone asked.
Yeah, I would say they're getting married and we're doing this video because a lot of relatives can't come to France. So
that's how you stole locations. I love it.
But because at that time that camera wasn't even flagged for having a video or component, and nobody would think you're ridiculous enough to shoot a movie on that thing.
Like no one knew you were under the radar.
Yeah. You know, and I still believe that the 5D gets away with a lot more stuff too. Meaning you could probably still pull the levers off the same way. Just because, and the sensitivity to that camera as opposed to a video camera is two different worlds still with the common person that sees what we're doing. So basically, it was to answer your question efficiently, it was 2 bodies, 2 lenses, backpack, and a tripod. Yeah, the monopod.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, because it looks like a still camera. Yeah,
we had forgive me because I don't have the name of it, but it's the cross. You know, it's the mic. It's a box mic that has the 2. It didn't. People are gonna say, "God damn it, dumbass Mike." You know what you're talking about. It's like the fact is, I know what I see. I don't know the words on the machine.
And then, as far as audio is concerned, I saw a picture that you had a mic plugged into the top.
Yeah. That was the recorder that we were doing it on. These they were actually the small SD cards that we're putting sound on.
You were recording on the SD cards as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You guys were really just threw caution to the wind, didn't you, on this one?
Yo, yeah. It
must have been an adventure and a half.
You look brilliant when it's really done. It's in the theater, but before that, you're building the roller coaster.
Now, with the screenplay, was a lot of it? Was it all written out, or was there a bunch of improv during that process?
Say 70 to 75% of that screenplay was written.
Okay.
The other 25% was, like when they're like putting on makeup in that hotel, or they're going out to drink and party, like, and going into other people's rooms, and that was done on site. And
then you just found it in the edit.
Yeah, we found it in the edit. We had a lot of footage, like them hanging out. We'd be in hotel rooms waiting to go downstairs to do a scene, and they would be sitting in the bathtub, or they would be looking at the view, or just hanging out. We basically followed 2 people in love around around France, and we were able to. They were so in tune to what they were doing. That they were on vacation, and I was just documenting it. Yeah,
they seem to have an insane amount of chemistry.
Yeah,
it was wonderful to see.
They didn't understand that there was a cameraman following them around.
They were just there. They were just enjoying it. Mm-hmm. When I watched the movie, it's almost surreal. The whole imagery, the whole everything, the way that almost I don't want to use the word ghostly, but surreal, dreamlike, very, very dreamlike in the sense of the way it was perceived, like the way it was shot and just the energy of it. I feel not to compare the movies, but Eyes Wide Shut has that dreamlike, surreal vibe. They're very different movies,
Yeah.
obviously, but that was the only film that kind of came to me. Now, you did this amazing production. You pushed the envelope. You were like the first feature to ever be made on a 5D, or one of the first,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, one of the first. I'd say we're in that discussion of being first. At least it was released as one of the first.
Which brings me to my next question. You were one of the first independent films that I know of to take full advantage of the VOD and digital distribution platform. Was that part of your plan? Was there a plan?
Well, there was a plan that we wanted to make a movie without restrictions, meaning we didn't feel like we had to go sell this movie at the end of the day or go have distributor meetings. Mm-hmm. Although that would be great we all intend to make our movies to be on the screen, and the compositions are to be on the big screen. However, when we thought of doing this 5D movie, we thought, we can make something intimate that you could just watch it on your iPad, and you could be anywhere, and we could just fly it out to wherever you're at. So this movie would have a small run anyways, maybe a 5-10 city theater, and nobody would see it. So why don't we just make a deal with an iTunes or a VOD and zap it out to everybody?
And this was 2011?
Yeah, it was. I think it was 2011 when it came out.
Right.
Yeah, but we did it in 2000. The deal was done in 2010.
Right. So 2010 and 2016 for VOD online was a very different world. Yeah. Not nearly as many options. But iTunes was around, and iTunes was just starting to kind of ramp up.
Yeah. Yeah. It didn't have a lot of on their catalog, mm-hmm. but they were showing, I think, things that were associated with Apple, or maybe things were associated with Disney. Not everything was going digital. We gave them the specs, and they took the movie, and it was nice because we got invaded by all the fans that heard about the movie.
Right. So how did that whole work? Like, how did you get the word out on the film? Like, how did you market this?
Stana had a really big following in Europe, especially Eastern Europe. There was some festivals being played, and so we sent the film to a Polish festival and a couple other, I forget the other festivals, and we didn't even show up, but I believe Stana went to one of them, and it was the reverse effect. Word was coming out of Europe that this French New Wave was coming to the United States, starring her. So all her fans built this huge following for the film, so when it opened here, people heard about it already.
Wow. So it was a reverse marketing campaign.
Yeah, it was reverse marketing without truly knowing. And also the TV audience that she had wanted to see her do wanted her to see her in this feature film.
I'm a big fan of Stan. I mean, I've watched all the episodes of Castle. I've been a big fan of her.
She's a lot of fun to work with.
Yeah, she's a lot of fun. And so you basically were doing something that a lot of people talk about today, including myself, is trying to leverage social media and leverage fan bases of your actors to help sell your independent movie.
Right.
And
they look at social media and how many followers do you got?
Yeah, exactly. That's like it's not like what are your credits, like what's your following.
What's your following?
Yeah, how many Twitter followers do you have? How many Facebook followers? How many YouTube followers?
I'm just tell you right now, I could not open a movie with my followers. I couldn't make a movie with my followers.
Well, I'll help you with that if you like, sir.
Yeah, no, I know. That's so great. Yeah, you're doing pretty dang good.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it. I've been Indie Film Hustle's been around for about 7 months. So we've been. I work it hard.
Yeah. You hustle.
I hustle. No question about it. And for people that, and for everyone who doesn't know, I literally just tweeted Michael on Twitter a couple days ago.
Yeah, you did.
And he's like, "Yeah, I can do the hustle, sure."
Yeah.
And a couple of days later, it's the fastest turnaround for an interview I've ever had.
Well, I've been where most of these listeners have been, and hopefully they all get to go through a journey that I've been through as an independent filmmaker. I still consider myself an indie guy all the way through, but I never ever do not say I don't have the time to help, or at least help somebody or some advice in that situation, because you get some good mentors in this industry, and you get a lot of good advice, and you get a lot of bad advice at the same time. And getting down and doing your bare knuckle filmmaking basically how to get it done.
Thank you, and thank you for that. I know the Indie Film Hustle tribe really appreciates it. Now, one other question. This is more of a I guess an actor technical question.
Uh-huh.
With for lovers only, since you basically were experimental as far as a SAG contract's concerned, how did that work when you actually started making money?
Oh,
I'm sure that was a conversation
it's still a conversation. It's a conversation with any union.
Uh-huh.
DGA, I won't say that they fired me, but in any it's tough when you're dealing with unions, because I'm aligned with all three of them, so you can't, what I would like to say is not really what I'm going to say, but
of course, fair enough.
But I will say something about the DGA. They weren't very kind for me going out and making that movie.
I've heard that about the DGA. They have wonderful benefits, and they're a very strong union for directors. But I mean, that's why Robert Rodriguez left. That's why Tarantino and Lucas aren't part of it. But it's interesting that they're there to help directors, but when directors go off and do something like this, like they don't allow it. But I think now they're a little bit different. I think they're kind of like that ultra low budget, like SAG does now. I think the DGA finally caught up to that. Am I right with that, or is that still off?
They caught up with it. I feel it's a still slippery slope with unions, because every filmmaker has a right to go create whatever they want, and if it's just not in their parameters or in their guidelines, they're gonna make a fuss. And the union is good when it comes to benefits and taking care of
residuals and stuff.
Yeah, and your personal side of your living and whatnot. But in terms of professionally, they haven't seemed to have they're not built for renegades or any mavericks or anybody that's trying to do something that hasn't been done before. They're not built for that.
Right. They're the status quo.
Yeah, it's a traditionalism that I understand, because it's romantic and it's great to keep making 10, 20, $30 million movies back to back, but that's not the way the world works. And they have to adapt to filmmakers that go, guess what? I'm going to make a movie for 10 grand and I'll make one for 100 grand. I'll make one for it's about the filmmaker's work at the end of the day and how they're going to provide for them or their family and actually get better, because they have to get better at their craft. And sometimes getting a $10 million film school isn't going to work.
So then that conversation with SAG and stuff, because I'm asking for my own, now I'm asking selfishly because I'm doing low budget films as well. And that whole SAG ultra low budget, or experimental and things like that, I guess that's to a certain point. And then after money starts coming in, then there's the conversation to be had, basically, correct?
Yeah. And, the strange thing about that conversation is studios have been making money a long time, and they don't seem to be going to find them for anything. And studios being sued left and right, distributors being for money they said has been made and that they can't find, or they've put in, they say they've lost. And some of the biggest movies you've ever seen are in the red still. But yet you have the unions coming after the smaller people saying, well, if you make money, we want to see it. Yeah, it's as I say, it's a hard conversation to have with the union that is actually looking for money. And when you do make the money, you're so happy you made the money, you've probably already spent it.
Right. And they're like, where's our money? And we're like, I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's what you say, what all filmmakers say, it's called back pay.
It's called back pay. Exactly. So you wrote a book, The Declaration of Independent Filmmaking, which I had no idea about until I started doing research. So it's on order and coming to me, so I can't wait to read it. Can you tell us a little bit about the book?
Yeah, the book was written, we were being approached because before you and a few other of your contemporaries that do podcasts and other people and do this type of, actually goodwill work.
Yeah, it is a lot of goodwill work.
You had books that were coming out like Robert Rodriguez, El Mariachi, and in the making of how to make I remember the big book was how to make
a $7,000 movie.
Yeah, how to make or how to make a movie on used car prices.
Oh yes, Mr. Schmidt.
Yeah, and you would see these things, but whether besides Robert and a few other, you saw a lot of filmmaking manuals that were people that either made one movie or were their professors in school. Yeah. They were making. There wasn't a lot of I wasn't going to do it after my first movie because I didn't know if I was going to be able to, the second one, the third one. After North Fork and that experience, I felt that we had enough under our belt that we could help other filmmakers not do some of the things that we did and actually improve the situation if they were able to understand where we were at. And also to say, we've had success 3 times in a row, but that doesn't mean we're more wealthy or richer. What we do have is knowledge, and that book is a compilation. It leads all the way up to Astronaut Farmer. It stops before we start making Astronaut Farmer. So you see Twin Falls, Idaho, how's that made, and Jackpot being the first digital movie because we're using Lucas's cameras that he was developing with Sony, and then we did North Fork, which was the biggest of all 3, but each of them were distributed and were out, and at that time was seen as a success. All 3 films were seen as somewhat of a success, but also they were made under all 3 different conditions. One was 400,000, one was I think 100,000, and the other one was at the end was $1 million point something. So you saw a different range of all types of budgets.
And you could talk intelligently about all 3 experiences, and you had a range of experience to talk about.
Yeah, and with actors, it started out with 2 completely unknown people, which were me and my brother doing Twin Falls, getting into Jackpot and using a lot of working actors for that were really known just with the actors, which was John Grice and even though Leslie Ann Warren was there, there was also Patrick Bouchot who was doing there. He was doing he was on TV, but he was a French New Wave actor. He was great. And so we were able to Garrett Morris, who was from SNL. So we started to graduate into getting a lot of great actors, but not what we would call ones that were going to finance your movie, and then when we got into doing North Fork, we ended up working with idols that we saw in Once Upon a Time in America and seeing Nick Nolte and James Woods. So you were able to see that we started by putting ourselves in a movie, then you could gradually cast other people, and then it was able to get some very notoriety, some big names. And I think those 3 movies, I believe, were able to show in every different situation, most people are in, even as they are now. What is it like to do a movie when nobody knows you? What's it like to do your second movie when you've had success? And it really, as a culmination of our career wrapped up in a few years, was those 3 movies. And you think it's difficult to make your first one, it's harder to make your second one, and then your 5th one, you never think you're going to ever make a movie again. It's a constant mental game also that you have to understand that. If you write a screenplay and you hold on to it too long, you say, this is my favorite movie, I'm always going to make it, it doesn't get made. You might be 10 years down the road and it's not being made. Best thing you can do is write another screenplay and keep crafting that, because one day one's going to hit and you say, dang, I have a whole locker full of scripts now.
Right. As opposed to just having one, which is a big mistake a lot of filmmakers make.
Yeah, I've seen that. I mean, there's still filmmakers today, when I started out in the 90s, that are still humping that first screenplay around.
Oh, Jesus. Now, how did you, I had a question about Twin Falls, Idaho. How much was the budget for that?
Just under $500,000.
How did you get financing for your first movie of $500,000 with no? Did you have anything before? Like, did you shoot?
I mean, I was shooting. Yeah, I had a few shorts. I had a few shorts. I had a couple, I would say, music videos, because that was happening. And I did one really nice sync sound short that I cut and went around in festivals. And that was probably, I would say, a calling card for people to say that I could direct a narrative. But what's tricky about doing shorts, and I don't know if it's still the same as today, but back when everybody was making shorts, it wasn't very much your graduation ticket to make a feature, because they would say, well, we know you can make a short. Are you going to make another short? Or you make a feature? And the short doesn't tell anybody you can make a feature. It just says you're capable of doing something at a short period of time. And if you like it, then... And so I felt that we fell in a trap with that short, because I would take it around and show it at the DGA. I'd show it to other people, and they go, this is really great. What are you doing next? And I said, well, I have a screenplay. And it was actually North Fork was the very first screenplay we ever wrote. And they looked at that and they go, "You're nuts. You're nuts if you want to make that movie. It's big. It's in Montana. It's on the high plains. And I mean, you're looking at Heaven's Gate right now. I mean, you're looking at the second biggest disaster in movie if we give you money for this. And so we wrote Twin Falls, Idaho. And we knew, well, if that's going to be too big and if North Fork's going to be too big, let's do something we could actually just get behind. We can be in it. We can actually do it for thousands of dollars. We have the crew. We have the person making the suit. We could actually have pulled off that movie for $25,000. We could have pulled that movie off for that much. And we were getting ready to do it. We were 3 months out. And our motto was, let's not set a budget, let's set a time. And it was around Christmas, and I said, we're going to give ourselves 6 months to finance this movie. If we don't have finance this movie, at least the costume will be built, the locations will be found. We were shooting on film, so I said, I'll get cans of short ends. I made all my relationships with Panavision. I made everything with Fuji. I had everything set, and I said, June 1st, we're going to shoot this in LA. And so we were going ahead and doing it for just whatever we could scrape together. 8 weeks before we started to shoot, a financer who was coming out of Seattle was coming down and financing small movies. And one of the ladies named Rena Ronson, now she's an agent over at William. Now she's not at William. She started at William Morris. Her and Cassian always are putting movies together. She said, I want you to meet this investor because she's coming down to Seattle. She's only here for a couple of days, and they're doing small movies. And I think she responded to it. And so one evening we drove down. It was right across the street from the La Brea tar pits, which was so ironic because you could feel like that's where your career is at that.
I've been there. I know.
Yeah, and it doesn't smell very good, and we probably didn't smell very good. And so we blended in really well. So we went into this meeting, and the lady read the screenplay and said, "I want to let you guys know something. I think she said I have twin sisters.
Oh,
I understand what this is about, and I would happily like to make this movie for you. Do you have a budget?" And she goes, "Can you do it for a price? Because I'm gonna award it like I'm never gonna see this money again because it's crazy to do a movie about
conjoined twins."
twins. Yeah, it's just nuts. And nobody knows who you guys are, and nobody's going to want to be in this movie if you even know somebody. So it just had everything working.
Yes, very much so on paper.
Yeah. So when we said we'd do it for the low budget agreement, which was $500 and under, she said, "You can get it for that agreement. That's 50 times more than the money I'm doing right now. So we'll figure this out." And within 6 weeks, we were shooting it.
Wow, that's pretty amazing, actually. Right place at the right time.
But my advice to filmmakers is continue like you're just going to make it and do it, because when the money comes, you're ready to go already.
Mm-hmm.
You're not waiting for money, then you're starting up and saying, "Well, I'm not sure." Get your budget done for what you think you can do it for, and understand that you might lock in bigger financing, but see what you can do it for. Get your scheduling down. Get the people that you can get for your movie and the timing. Because you're going to have to, if you want to make it, you're going to have to make it. You got to make something, or you're really just going to be at Starbucks or somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've all been in LA. For those who don't live in LA, if you go to any Starbucks anywhere in Los Angeles at any time of day, there is someone writing a screenplay.
Yeah,
I think Starbucks hires them just to sit there. I don't know.
Yeah. Now, I'm really surprised, and let's just. I'll share with you on this.
Yeah.
You can share with me on this idea. Yeah. Starbucks should probably start naming coffees at writer's expenses.
Right, I think so.
Like this is the final draft cup.
This is this is the Charlie Kaufman cup.
Yeah. This is a Charlie Kaufman cup. Have a cup of Charlie, or have a cup of Kaufman. Yeah. Have
a cup of Robert McKee.
Yeah.
Have writers sponsor.
You can have all kinds of.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Only in LA though.
No, it has to be LA based only. Absolutely, you couldn't go anywhere. Yeah. But like, but then basically in San Francisco, then you could do tech startups like the Steve Jobs.
Yeah. The jobs. I think it would work. I think we would work. I mean, we're always looking at other businesses right now, right?
Of course, just in case this filmmaking thing doesn't work out.
Yeah.
Now, a quick question about film and digital. You've shot both. Mm-hmm. Where's your heart, and where do you shoot mostly nowadays?
My last feature was on the Alexa, which I found, beautifully fast and slow, and has a lot of
a lot of low light
love, and it just has a lot. It just has, they've done a really good job with the Alexa. I shot 4 features on the Red and the Epic, did Big Sur on the Red and for the Epic, and it was a beast. It was great. It has some really, really great things about it. I shot my first, Twin Falls was 35 millimeter, Jackpot was digital, and North Fork was film. And I found that the story should dictate what you want to see, but now the digital is where it's at. There's no reason why you shouldn't be doing it. I was sitting with Erwin Winkler a couple weeks ago, and Erwin, who was just finishing Martin Scorsese's movie, said to me,
the one's coming out this
Silence,
September.
I think it's called.
Yeah.
He said,
"Is that the one with De Niro and DiCaprio together?"
I'm not sure, but it was shot in Asia, and
film, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and he goes, Marty shot some on film and some on digital, and I'm not quite sure why he wanted to do digital for some, or why he wanted to do spy. He goes, hell, I don't know why you do it. And then when we show it to him, he can't tell the difference right now anyway, so I don't know what we're doing. And I laugh because you have a legend like you have a legend like that who speaks about another legend, and it feels as common as this conversation. If you're in the room to listen to it, they're talking about the same thing we're talking about, and they're having just as much fun and jokes about it, and yet it's a common thing to talk about this world being digital and film, and some holding on to this romantic part. When you look at what film, the emulsion process, it's a beautiful thing, and
it's really magical. I mean, I've shot 35, I've shot 16, I've shot 8, and there is something magical about celluloid, and there's a lot of filmmakers who are fighting very hard to keep it. I mean, Star Wars was shot 35, and it's actually making a slight comeback now. I've actually seen. I'm working on. I own a post house as well, and I'm working on a film right now that was shot on Super 16. Independently, they shot it because they wanted to get that look, like The Wrestler had the look, and Black Swan. Those were all shot Super 16, but it's starting to come back. And it's funny that I was talking to a couple of buddies of mine over at the ASC, and they're like, we can't find anybody to load mags. Like, there's no, the generation that is coming up has no understanding about loading a mag or film or any, and it's like, I'm like, really? Like,
the ACs are just they're either moving. Nothing's really moving sideways. It's just moving vertical, and everything's going up. And when you had that film bag and you had the guy sticking his arms in there and loading,
scary.
And then you say check the gate, which was a term which they still sometimes say it just as a joke, right. Or let's check the gate. Or
for those who don't know what that term means, it means to check the gate to make sure that there wasn't a hair that got caught in the frame, because sometimes you can shoot 3 or 4 takes, and if there's a hair in the gate, forget about it. We got to reshoot it, and all those takes are gone. Now, digitally, you could fix that if there was a major issue, but it's interesting. I don't know if maybe I'll shoot film again one day, but I do love the speed of digital and the quality of digital, to be honest with you. And the Alexa is a gorgeous camera, and I've shot a lot of red too.
Yeah. Once these film historians that have fallen in love with film, they do, end up taking the negative and digitizing it and working in post and manipulating it. they're not truly taking it to a chemical situation in that unless they're going to release it, but they don't do an inner negative or an inner positive.
No, that's all gone.
It's so there's the actual shooting part, I understand, but right after it gets to the laboratory, it goes back to what we're doing.
It's done. Yeah, it's just a recording medium now. It's not a full circle. I mean, you remember when DI was the big thing with Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
Like now it's every single movie has to go through DI.
Yeah.
Before, and I try to explain to people sometimes it was a chemical. Like, how did they color before? I'm like, oh, the DP went into the lab.
Yeah.
They just did it.
And you're dealing with baths, and you're dealing with 3 colors or 4 colors, and you're
right, a little bit more yellow there, a little bit more blue.
Yeah. When you hit, the funny thing about Northwark was it's presumed to look like a black and white movie. And, I mean, people look at it and they think it's black and white because
it's very desaturated.
Yeah, we flashed the negative, we actually flashed the negative in the camera, and then we skipped the bleach that left more silver in the print, which would make it darker. And so when the lab got it, they didn't understand what we did with the set. All the sets were painted black and white and gray, and everybody wore black and white and gray. There was no color to
saturate.
There's no color for them to see what kind of movie that we were making. So when we got it, it was all pink. It was all pink. And when we saw the first one, I go, there's no color to take off of. We don't know. We said, no, the movie is shot. Everything in the movie is black and white. So we wanted to make a black and white movie, but shoot it in color. And the studio went, you couldn't sell a black and white movie. So we said, why don't we just make the movie in front of the camera all black and white? So we spray painted the grass gray. All the milk bottles, all the ketchup bottles had gray paint in them. If you look, every single thing in that movie was a 10. We carried a 10 gray color chart on our belts. And so we would say, pick number 4 to do the bedspread, do number 5 to do the shoes. So every single thing in that movie was out of 10, 1 being almost white and 10 being black.
Wow! So you basically color graded in camera.
Yeah, in camera.
On set actually.
Yeah, on set. Yeah, and so when they filmed it, when we would watch it, you were looking at a black and white movie, except for the skin tones of the people. You would see a sort of a blush, but that's all the color. That was it.
Yeah, and you did
we shot. One of the opening shots is the American flag that we had sewn in black and white, and the stars are white, and the blue is black, and the red is gray. And that flag flew over the state of a part of Montana, and when you photograph it, it looks black and white.
I mean, and for people who don't know what bleach bypass is, it's the process that Fincher did on Seven to get those darks, like the blacks, just pitch black, but then he crunched it. Yeah. Did he? They didn't do DI. Yeah. There was no DI then. He did it all in the lab, I think, back then. Wow. Yeah. So, and one last question before I get to a few. I always ask the same last questions to everybody. So, but one curious question I have: why did you change your name as the director on Stay Cool and Smell of the Success?
Oh, those were my the movies that when you're in good company, just like when you find financing falls through, when you don't get the cut that you want, you take your name off the movie.
You Alan Smithied it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. So, but you did those 2 back to back, so you had 2 bad experiences.
I did 2 weeks of it was 2 years of my life that with 2 really special movies. There were 2 really special movies, and they were expensive to make, and
hell of a cast on both of them.
When we sold them both, the minute we finished, we sold them. The one premiered at Sundance, one premiered at Tribeca. Mm-hmm. IFC Films, which wanted them both, and there was another company at the same time. We had the financier, the production company, wanted to hold out for a bigger offer, and I said, the success of these movies is going to be distributed. And so we got in a big debate of, is it better to have a movie released or to make the money up front and never see it, or have a movie released and to be able to be credible to make more movies? And if this is a brand new production company, and they just had different ideas, and I understand that they had different ideas, but at the end of the day, this was I think it was my sixth and seventh film, or seventh and eighth film. I had a really good understanding of what was going to happen if they didn't sell fast. They would look like these movies weren't doing well. There was a failure, and it's better to have a perception in Hollywood, since it runs on perception, that these films are sold and they're coming out, as opposed to holding on for 2 years, seeing if you're going to get a better offer. And they said, well, we'll get a better offer if we go in and recut these movies. And I said, well, you guys said, if you're going to get a better offer, then you go for it. And so I actually, before I removed my name, I watched what they wanted to do, and I said, go ahead. And I watched the movies back, and I said, all right, if you're going to have screenings with that cut, go for it. There wasn't an offer. There wasn't an offer for those movies for a year. And then I said, well, go back to the original cut, because you have an offer on these movies. And because we proved to be right, it wasn't right to be proved them wrong. It wasn't. So they sat on the movies and released them for, it was one of those tragedies of films that we've seen with other filmmakers too.
But let me ask you though, at the level you were at when you made these two movies, wouldn't you? And I'm assuming the budgets, they weren't like $100 million movies or even $20 million movies. Wouldn't you get final cut, or wouldn't you negotiate final cut?
Yeah, we negotiated final cut, but it's when you're dealing with attorneys that can sue you for sitting on a park bench for doing nothing. You can start picking fights. And what their idea was, what they claim was, you had final cut if it's sold. And so if they didn't want to make it, meaning if they didn't accept the deal, it didn't sell.
Oh, so that was their loophole.
Their loophole was, you have final cut, and you have a deal, and we could sell it, so you keep final cut. But if we don't sell it, it's not selling, so we're going to recut it. So it was one of those fighting, disasters that you walk into saying, I have final cut, but if it doesn't sell, obviously there's a problem.
And you did two, not one, because normally you hear that story with one movie, but you had two back to back.
It was 2 years of just taking it on the chin. Taking it everywhere, actually.
I understand what you mean, sir.
Yeah.
Well, with that said, can you talk a little bit about your latest film, Hotbot, which I hear?
Well, Hotbot we made right after Big Sur, and it was a screenplay that we had for a while, and it was sort of a homage to Weird Science, and it was to be a small $1 million feature that we were going to go shoot and really have a lot of fun. And we had a lot of fun with that movie, because it was just two goofy teenagers getting a sex robot way before it was hip, way before the Scarlett Johansson robot came out yesterday, way before. It was years ago. We did this 3 years ago, and it was fun. It didn't run the same risk as the two movies we're speaking just about. What happened was, we decided they wanted to get a true theatrical, and it was going to be a day-on-date movie, and so they just waited for that perfect timing, and as it went on and went on and went on, I don't think the distributor was happy with how they were going to release it and what they were going to put behind it. So there's a lot of turmoil about how you were going to release a movie like that. But having said that, it wasn't that kind of it wasn't the same experience. It's the movies is the movie, and it came out. I think it came out a little late. Actually, it came out way late. But then that's the type of movie that can stick around, and it doesn't have. Somebody will always discover it. So I didn't have too much precious feelings about it. It was a fun exercise. It was fun to shoot, and the kids in it were a lot of fun.
Yeah, it looked like, from the trailer, it looks like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So what final advice can you give young filmmakers venturing out on their first feature film?
Make decisions, and that you can ultimately correct, because if you don't make a decision, you're just going to be like most of everybody, looking at what do I want to do or how I want to do it. I believe a director is, for a better word, is mainly a coach, not so much. They have to keep the stamina of everybody going, and especially independent films are based on relationships, not so much money. Although money starts and stops your production, what keeps it going are the days you don't have money. So you really have to be the person behind that builds that relationship with that crew, that allows them to give you what you need and get everybody to do the exact same thing at the exact same time when you call action. And that is somewhat of being a coach in that term. As a football analogy, to get all those different personalities together on the line to say hi, that's pretty brilliant. To not move, everybody stand still until I say, that to me is like movie making. To get all these people just to shut up, stop.
Yep. You're absolutely right. It's like herding wet cats.
Yeah. It's the best position to be in and the worst position to be in at the same time, because it's controlled chaos.
Everybody wants to be in that position, but very few people know what to do once they get there.
Yeah, and then thrive under those conditions, because day 1 to day 30, you spent everything you've got inside and out, and you've got to act like it was day 1.
I was going to ask you real quick, with that being said, the whole mumblecore, Mark Duplass, Joe Swansburg kind of films, what's your vibe on those? What's your opinion on those kind of films that just got filmmakers that just go out with whatever camera they have? And
you mean Mark Duplass?
Yeah, Mark Duplass. Excuse me. I say Duplass.
Yeah. He's close. I love that kid. I call him. I love him to death, just because we've crossed paths so many times in our careers. We're not that unsimilar about the way we've done our movies and the way we financed it. He is consistently going down the path that I kind of go back and forth with. Meaning I've done higher films and lower films, and I do quite different genres back to back. But Mark has just been somebody I've always admired, and I have a good relationship with. And there's nothing bad I can say about somebody who's actually kicking butt all the time. And his wife too. His wife is tremendous.
And his brother's now killing it on Trans America?
Oh yeah,
Transparent, the Amazon show, as an actor now as well.
Yeah, Jay
as well. And did you when you saw Puffy Chair? Obviously,
yeah.
It's like I watch Puffy Chair, and I'm just like, because you're taught in film school that everything needs to look like perfect. You have to make the production value, and you have to do this and that. Yeah. And these guys just grabbed a camcorder and went and shot a movie. Yeah, they don't care about sound. They didn't care about anything, but the story was good.
Yeah. That's the fabric of a good movie. It's just getting that story down, and execution's always going to be judged. Even when you make something that's beautiful to look at, people will say, "Oh, I still didn't like the way this looked," and you're like, "They really spent time doing that." And there's some people that say, "I don't spend time. I just want to I want to see the acting and the story." And people say, "I didn't like the way it looked, but God, that was a funny movie, or that was a really well-acted movie." And I think the look of a movie has a free pass if the story's great.
I actually have a podcast coming out, or just by this time this airs, it already had come out, about basically telling filmmakers, like, no one cares what you shot your movie on. And a lot of people are like, "Oh, I shot it on the Red, or I shot it on the Alexa." I'm like, you could shoot it on your iPhone. Is your story good? Yeah. That's what matters. Is the story good? You're absolutely right. I think you do get a pass visually and even audio as well if you've got a good story. And those are so rare, aren't they?
They're rare. I'm working on a picture right now where the writing is fantastic. I'm working on Speed the Plow with David Mamet's play that I'm adapting into a movie.
He's done okay. He writes okay.
Oh, you see his words, and you go, what's wonderful about David is you just say his words. You don't have to do anything. Just let them come out of your mouth, and you are there. And that's remarkable with David's work. Mamet just has that ability to you don't have to put any touches on his words. You don't have to bring them up, down, polish them, whatever you want. You just say them, and they are in Mamet. You're Mamet now.
You're Mamet, exactly. Like a Tarantino, like your Tarantino. Yeah. Now. It's like there's that voice. It's so crisp and clear, and it's you can't confuse it.
Yeah, it's great writers have the tact it like Kerouac when I did Big Sur. It was a definitely Kerouac piece because of the way he was a language spinner. He was able to spin language in a way that was unique at the time, and it was a train of thought that was recorded that was unique for a generation, which probably other bloggers of today do the same thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna leave you with the last few questions I have, which I ask all of my. These are the toughest questions, so I ask all of my guests this.
If they're not timed, then it's going to be
Okay,
better.
not timed at all. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film industry or in life?
Well, I don't know if the lesson that took me the longest to learn was don't be so fucking precious.
Oh man, that is a lesson most filmmakers need to learn in a big
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
Don't be so precious because that preciousness is what has you hawking that same script since 1995.
Yeah, and it'll kill you. It'll kill the spirit. It'll kill your spirit. It'll kill your wife's spirit. It'll kill your kid's spirit. It'll kill your dog's spirit, because you're going to start defending a piece of art just to defend it, whether it's right or wrong. You're going to start defending it and make choices based on that. That's probably might not make the film happen or make the film not that great.
That's a great lesson to learn. And my God, if most filmmakers coming out of school or just starting out would learn that lesson, man. God, I mean, I've had so many. I mean, I've been in post for about 20 years, so I've had so many filmmakers walk through my doors, and my God, some you never know a filmmaker or a human being more than you do when you're in a dark room with them for 8 hours, 10 hours at a time for weeks on end.
Oh, it's these families that we create are the traveling circus families of today, and it's just different personalities for months on end, and
yep.
You don't see them for 2 years, and then you're back in bed with them again. It's
carnies.
Yeah.
It's carnies.
Yeah.
It's something that people don't understand. Like, we are kind of like carnies in that sense, because you like, and it's weird. You make such intense relationships being a director, being a filmmaker with your crew, that you literally can not see them for 5 years, and then, hey, you want to come back to work with me? And the second you see them, it's like not a day has gone by.
Yeah, and you talk to your crew, you see your crew way more than you've seen your family the rest of your life. You spend 18 hours a day with most of these brothers and sisters. It's intense, and it's a great bond when it works really, really well. And then you don't have to see them for 2 years because you spent more time than those 2 years apart in one film.
in one 2-month period or something like that. So, and then what are 3 of your favorite films of all time, in no particular order?
Maybe not all the favorites, the influential ones, the ones I remember. I would say seeing Once Upon a Time in America was a film that influenced me, because it wasn't The Godfathers, it was the Jewish mafia, and it was wonderful to watch James Woods and Robert De Niro at very young ages duel it out on this movie. It was just beautiful to watch. It was authentic. And that was his foray, in America, and it just taught me a lot about music and cinematography, and why I felt, and why I didn't understand the movie, why I didn't understand what was the depth of it that I didn't get, and what was the symbolism, the religious symbolism all throughout the film, and where was he coming from. And I think that was one of those movies I look back on going, wow, that was something. They're all childhood films in a way, because we're so impressionable, and I probably say Close Encounters of the Third Kind was one of those films, which was just a stroke of genius to have the suspense that he built around these foreigners that we call aliens, and how they would come in and out of the world and be in our daily lives, and attach ourselves to that was wonderful to watch as a kid. It was just wonderful.
I mean, you watch Jaws still holds up today.
Yeah, I would say those two are on the same feeling, same level. As I would say I could interchange those all the time. And then the third one hasn't been made yet.
Wow, very great answer. I like that answer.
Yeah.
It's still coming. It's still coming down the line.
Yeah.
So where can people find you, Michael?
In Montana?
Online, sir. Online. Like Twitter, websites.
My name.
I wasn't asking for your home address.
But it's a big state.
It is.
It's a big state. And
there's more cows than people, though.
Oh yeah, there definitely are. There's more. There's still under 1 million people in that whole state.
Yeah.
It was. I was thinking a lot about today because Merle Haggard passed away this morning, and he had a great song called Big City, and it was about leaving everything behind and being dumped off in Montana. So, my blessings go out to him and his family, because he was such a great, iconic, he had something like 79 top 10 hits in the top 10, or 73, I think it was 73 top 10 hits. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's more than Lady Gaga. I'm joking.
I know. I mean, all she wanted to do is have a duet with him.
Right.
But yeah, but you can find me on Twitter. It's I'm on Instagram, the same name as Twitter.
Michael Polish.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Michael.
Underscore.
Yeah. Michael _ Polish is for usually both of them.
Got it.
Or you can find them on both. Or yeah, I think they're both.
And do you have a website at all, or no?
No, I have your website now. You can find me on Alex.
You can find him on Indie Film Hustle, which will live all of it. Now that's your calling card now. Like, I don't know, just go to Indie Film Hustle, look my name up. All my contact information's there.
He's right there, right in the corner.
Michael,
if anybody's looking for Michael Polish, just have that arrow.
Michael, man, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man.
Thanks, man.
Really, really, thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Keep up the good work, and you're doing a good job for the community.
I appreciate it, man. Hope you guys picked up some knowledge on that one, man. I hope you guys appreciate I was asking him all those questions. I was really grilling him about all the technical stuff and even some of the business stuff, because I was really curious to see how he was able to do everything he did on For Lovers Only. So if you guys haven't had a chance to check that out, I'm going to put a link to not only that, but a bunch of his other movies, as well as his amazing book, The Declaration of Independent Filmmaking, which I've since read, and it is a really, really, really good book for independent filmmakers. It's a great, I would rank it up there with Rebel Without a Crew, Robert Rodriguez's book, which I'll also put in the links in the show notes, because it was a really great book and really shows you a passionate group of filmmakers trying to make their movies. And they throw a lot of lessons out about how it really is and what you need to do to make a movie. So definitely check that out. The show notes are, of course, at indiefilmhustle.com/069. So once again, thank you, Michael Polish, for being on the show. You are an inspiration. Thank you for showing us that we can do it no matter what. Just a good story, a camera, and a dream, and you can go make something happen. As always, guys, head over to filmmakingpodcast.com, and leave us a good review for the show. It really helps us out a lot. And I've been getting a lot of notes, emails, letters from the tribe, and of encouragement, of thank yous, of how much the show means to them and how much the website means to you guys. And I really, man, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much for being loyal listeners of the show. And it really humbles me every time I get these letters and these emails. So please keep them coming. It keeps me going. It really does keep me going. And I do have a bunch of stuff I'm working on, some exciting stuff that I'm going to be bringing you guys in the next coming weeks. I am working heavily in the lab, as they say, to bring out some very cool stuff. And I'm going to be doing some very experimental stuff moving forward in the feature film world. Coming up soon, so I will keep you guys abreast of that as it goes forward. So as always, guys, thank you very, very much for being just being you guys. Thanks, guys, so much. Keep that hustle going, keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.